Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we've got some familiar Bears faces heading out the door. The Bulls trying to win while losing, and Cubs and Sox spring training games have started. All this and more in this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Season is starting to wind down, so you may want to head on over to icehogs.com, pick up a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Only 90 minutes from the city limits and fun for the whole family. That's at affordable prices. Head on over to icehogs.com. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. How are you doing, my friend Alex?
I am doing quite well.
February in sports is a pretty lonely month.
Yes, it is. It's right before a lot of big things happen, and you're just kind of waiting for it, and you're just dragging on. You want March Madness. You want spring training games to see your actual favorite players play more than one at bat. You want to get down to the home stretch of the NHL and NBA seasons. February really does kind of suck on many levels.
Yeah, so the NFL, you got the combine, but for the most part, it's before the free agency period opens. It's before the draft. It's just a lot of, at least for Chicago, it's a lot of Greg Gabriel yelling at everybody else how they're dumb.
Yeah.
And basketball and hockey, this is usually that part of the season where it's not the final stretch run, but we're after the All-Star games, so you're starting to get a little of season fatigue. And our teams both stink. So there's not much going on. Baseball, you're right. Right now, you're like, oh man, who pitched for the Cubs these last 3 games? And you're like, I don't know any of these people.
You're seeing Charcer Burks out there leading the way in the cleanup spot in the late innings. I mean, that should say enough right there.
Yeah, so we don't have a ton on this show, but we've got a few topics here. I think, I don't know, maybe the first one I'd like to talk about is a little bit with the Bulls. So, we're all in the same, I think, mindset as far as Bulls fans is we know that this season is a lost season. We're not making the playoffs. And we want to try to get the best draft pick that's possible. And we went last week, we discussed a lot about how the NBA works with the lottery system, blah, blah, blah. You get draft pick, your draft status is a number of lottery balls in a lottery machine, and you get more balls the worse you are. And the Bulls are in the middle of the pack record-wise as far as the bad teams go. So statistically, they're probably going to get like the 8th or 9th pick. But I think we universally as Bulls fans want them to get the best draft pick possible, but still want to develop our young core. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, think about it. We've kind of set this criteria for the quote-unquote perfect tank win, and the perfect tank win is losing a game, but seeing the kids play and play a lot of minutes and play effectively. That's what we want to see, and that fits that mold right there.
Yeah, and I've been racking my brain thinking like how do you actually do this? I mean, I know one way was they traded Nico. Clearly, that was that's going to get you some more
Thank
losses.
goodness.
Yeah, and brought back a first round pick. It's crazy, but the other one was they kept Chris Dunn on the injured list for like way longer than he needed to recover from a concussion.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that hit was pretty bad, but he was out for a long time, and that was unnecessary. And if they were in a stretch run or try to make the playoffs, I guarantee that he would have been cleared medically much sooner than that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think they knew that having him on the sidelines is going to enhance their chances of losing. But then they came out and said that the veteran guys are going to be benched and play limited minutes down this final stretch. So Robin Lopez and Holiday are going to get limited to no minutes in favor of guys like David Nawaba and Cameron Payne and Cristiano Felicio. And you're like, okay, now we're starting to talk. And I think for me, that Sixers game was the perfect culmination of look at what our young core can do and still find a way to lose.
I couldn't have been happier after that game. There was like the first time in my life I stood and cheered for one of my teams losing because it was the perfect situation. We saw some great things from the young kids. We saw some great things and we lost. I'm like, this is perfect. This is what we want to see the rest of the year. Next year will be a different story. I think next year, if they get, some good picks and they think they have what is going to be their young core going further, or at least most of it, then you kind of want to start to see them get some results. But for this year, that was the best scenario I could think of.
Yeah, that couldn't have been happier with that game, is I thought they were going to win it. And I was like, well,
Me too.
what it is what it is. But then they were able to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And I was like, nice, this is perfect. Because you did see your core three, as it stands right now, you got to see them play together. And they really have had limited minutes together this season.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true.
But where you're starting to see issues, and this is, I guess, probably good for the Bulls, is where Zach LaVine is starting to take off and start to look better and better and play more minutes and really start to show that no lingering effects of that knee injury. Is you're definitely seeing Lauri Markkanen hit that rookie wall.
Yeah, and it's kind of expected. At least I expected it. It's hard to ask someone like that who's 20 years old playing in this league to not hit a kind of wall like that.
Yeah, because he was playing European competitive basketball all summer long, and then quickly went to the NBA. He's got a newborn kid, which, I mean, you're still young. You don't have one yet, but I can tell you is that they keep you up. You're exhausted. Even if he's got the money to have help and things like that, is, you're exhausted. Those kids, they're up every couple of hours. And any parents out there listening, you can attest to this, is that these kids keep you up. So that just, I mean, on its own, not an excuse, but he's playing in a longer season than ever before. He just went from one season right into the next, and he's got a newborn. All those together really is a recipe for just burnout.
Yeah, it really is. And I think a lot of people do understand that. It's a lot right there. And it's a lot of pressure too. When you're kind of the spotlight of this team now, because he's pretty much been in the spotlight the whole season, because you've had Dunn and LaVine have their injury problems, so obviously they weren't playing. Markkanen's been here since the beginning of the season. He was kind of, in my opinion, the centerpiece of that trade. So in addition to all what you just said, that spotlight factor, I think, also can take a toll on a 20-year-old.
Yeah, but he's even admitting that he's hit a wall. He's talking about how he's tired, and now he's tired. He's missing shots, and he's getting frustrated. And it really is a cascading effect. Is just the fatigue factor can really cause that, a downhill slide, and that's what he's seeing. It's one thing if you're just tired because you were out late and you take a nap and you're back to normal, but if you're actually just physically fatigued, you just need a actual legit break. And this summer is probably going to be a good time for him to lay off basketball activities for a little bit and just, work on his strength and conditioning.
Yeah, and you got to give him credit for at least admitting what the problems are, because I know some people could say, oh, saying you're tired, blah, 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 it's loser talk. Honestly, I'd rather him be honest, because if you're honest, then I think it's easier to work a way around some of those things. That's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's guys that have been around a long time and they won't admit it, but they admit it at least probably behind closed doors.
Yeah.
But at least admitting it, maybe not publicly, but at least admitting it, you can work on it. He knows what the issue is. It's just finding a solution, because being just fatigued during the season, not a lot of room to fix things. Especially when he was in part of the All-Star game festivities. That would have been a break for him. But another factor too is with Levine back, that's also taking away opportunities for him. And part of being a shooter and a scorer is being aggressive and taking those shots. And if you've got a guy like Levine who's a scorer and you're already not feeling up to it, it's really easy to defer. And he's sort of taking a back seat to Zach LaVine a little bit instead of working through this. So that's just another whammy. They don't necessarily need him to take the reins.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, other than that, it's the Bulls the front office is, they're not. I can really appreciate this. I know I bang on Gar and Pax a lot, but I can appreciate that John Paxson is not putting Fred Hoiberg in the position of forcing him to tank, but he's taking away things to make Fred's job harder. So Fred's going to keep trying to win. These young guys are going to keep trying to win, but John is doing the things that are the dirty job of taking away things that make it more likely they'll lose. And I can actually appreciate that.
Yeah, I can too. It's weird. This season, I've actually kind of appreciated some of the work that they've done. And by the work being done, at least in the public eye, I see a lot of it in John Paxson. You don't really hear from Gar much. You really don't.
No, and I didn't know if that was a sign that Gar was out of favor and maybe on his last legs in the organization, because ownership won't get rid of Gar, but John has the ability to get rid of Gar. But then I started looking into it more, and apparently other reporters have been looking into it as well. And apparently Gar is working behind the scenes on things. They've made the conscious choice that John Paxson would be the face of the organization as far as answering front office questions. And they said because, those two didn't say, but reporters that actually work in there and have sources, is that Gar always sounds like he's lying to you, and John sounds a lot more genuine. So they wanted that to be the perception.
Okay, that's interesting.
And it's true.
It is. It isn't. Yeah, yeah. When you listen to Gar, you don't want to listen to him because you think you're hearing a bunch of bull crap. But that definitely makes sense, because when I was looking at this situation, for the longest time, we were so confused over who is doing what and who has what power because that's never really been made clear publicly. So I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, okay, this year, with the way things are going, is this kind of a Rick Hahn, Kenny Williams type thing? Or is this kind of I wouldn't completely compare it to the Marlins, but the Marlins ownership, a bunch of these guys are making the moves, but Jeter is the face saying all this stuff. So I was kind of trying to find out which one it was closer to. But when you mentioned that, I mean, it does make sense in a way. I never really trusted Gar Forman to be like on some of our fans' good side because, yeah, we've been wanting Garpax fired for a long time, but the recent moves that they've made, the way they've handled this rebuild so far, it's what we've been wanting. I don't know, maybe it was just they had it in them the whole time and this season was just a big wake-up call, or I don't know. There's still a lot of questions I have, but I'll give them credit for at least handling things well this season for the most part.
Yeah, I agree there. What else with the Bulls? They had what was supposed to be the rematch, but the mano a mano with Zach LaVine and Jimmy Butler, which the first time around at the United Center was a fantastic game. Well, it was a fantastic battle. Those two just went back and forth, and Jimmy may have got the better of the stats. Zach got the win, and I think everybody was, even people outside of Minnesota and Illinois, were probably excited about this game. Just that great matchup, and unfortunately, Jimmy Butler got hurt.
Yeah, but hey, it could have been worse.
Yeah, it could have been worse, and it's those don't know. Jimmy tore his meniscus in his knee. So he opted to have surgery to repair it, and he's hoping to be back by the time for the playoffs. But I mean, it could have been much worse. There's no ligament damage apparently, but you never like to see things like that. And I know, I've been annoyed in the past with Jimmy Butler. He's always going to be a bull in my eyes, and you never want to see him go down with an injury.
No, you don't. It really sucked seeing that. Even though he's not a Bull anymore, it really sucked seeing that.
But you did see Zach LaVine look good in that game. So you're seeing the development of Zach LaVine, and he's still on the minutes limits, and he's not playing the back-to-back games, which I think there might be one this week, back-to-back game. But you're not going to see him in back-to-back games, which is probably smart. Is a lost season. No sense in stressing his knees after he came back. Even though, I mean, I'm sure if you talk to the doctors, they have no problems as long as he's not in discomfort or pain. But, better safe than sorry. Yeah,
I agree. I definitely agree.
And as far as standings wise, is the Bulls we're at 59 games out of an 82 game season. So 23 games left, and they are currently in the eighth position as far as the draft. And they're only a game and a half out of being at the sixth place. So there's still an opportunity here to move up and get more lottery or more balls in the lottery pick.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually funny. This Friday, my dad, my brother, and I were actually going to the Bulls Mavericks game, and it's just going to be a big tankathon.
Oh yeah, because I mean, I'm not sure if you saw, Mark Cuban got a $600,000 fine for admitting that they're tanking.
Yeah, I did hear that.
I mean, we all know they're tanking. Phoenix is bad, and they've lost 9 in a row. 9 in a row. That's really pathetic. But Dallas is right behind them. They're only a half game behind them, and they've lost 4 in a row. Atlanta is bad. Orlando's bad. Sacramento is bad. There's some bad teams that are just, losing. If you look through the record of the worst teams, In the last 10, Phoenix is 1-9, Dallas is 2-8, Atlanta 3-7, Memphis 1-9, Brooklyn 1-9, the Bulls 2-8, New York 1-9. It's teams that are legit trying to lose.
Yeah, there's plenty of them out there. And, my brother, an NBA writer, was talking about it with me earlier today because I saw him today. And he was saying that there are a lot of bad teams trying to tank, but there's no clear-cut worst team in basketball. They're all trying to compete for like that top tanking spot to get the best chance at a lottery pick. And he's absolutely right. There really is no clear-cut worst team. It's a big mess of bad teams, but no one has a big lead.
Yeah, it's you might ask, what's the big deal of if you're fourth versus third or fourth versus fifth, in your position, and the reasoning is I don't know if you guys have ever seen the old school, like, is it WGN, where they would draw the lottery numbers out of a machine.
Yeah.
That's what they do with the NBA. You get ping pong balls with your team name on it, and the worse you are, the more balls you get. So if you're the number one pick, you're the worst record, you have a 25% chance of getting the number one overall pick and a 64.2% chance of getting a top 3 pick. If you go down to the 4th position, which at this point is a 1-game difference, 1 game separates those, and you go from a 64.2% chance of a top 3 to a 33.6%. So your chance is pretty much going half of getting a top 3 pick. So that's where the big deal is. And if you look at the Bulls are 3 games behind Phoenix as the worst record in basketball. 3 games. And the difference between percentage of getting a top 3 is Phoenix has a 64.2% and the Bulls have a 9.9%. So there's a huge difference. One goes from very likely to not very likely.
Yeah, you're definitely right. I think that it's interesting to look at kind of those percentages. It's so funny you brought up the whole Illinois lottery thing on WGN because, like you said, that's basically what it is. And one spot can make a huge difference. What's going to be interesting is you look at that whole concept, but you look at the teams, how close they are. You're always trying to analyze, okay, which one's worse? Which one's worse, Yeah,
and if the Bulls were to move up 1 position from eighth worst record to 7th worst record, is their odds of a top 3 or number 1 overall pick go up 50% from moving up 1 position.
That's pretty significant.
If they move up 2 positions, which would be a game and a half difference, is they go from 9.9% to 21.5% of getting the a top 3 pick. So this is a big deal. It's it's not like maybe part of the answer to solution is making it a little less of a drastic drop between positions and making it a little more linear scaled. Because a team like the Bulls, they're only 3 games from being the worst team in the league, and they have like a minimal chance of getting a top 3 pick versus a 2 out of 3 chance.
Right.
So so there's definitely incentive for the Bulls to lose, and just think of if Nico wouldn't have helped this team go on that 8-game winning streak.
Yeah, I know. Think about where they'd be.
They figure maybe they win 2 out of those 8. So it's a 5-game swing, and then the Bulls are right there for the number 1 pick.
But hey, at least we got another first rounder from that.
Yeah, we do. We do get another first rounder, but it's the New Orleans Pelicans pick, and they're on a 5-game winning streak. So
yeah, I know.
I keep watching that. And so this, you're probably not going to get a lottery pick out of this, but at least another first rounder is another first rounder.
I think I told you this when we were at Peace, but I literally had a dream where we were in the lottery and we got like the 1 in 3 picks, and I was going crazy. Yeah, the chances of that are probably very, very, very minimal, but hey, like you said, and like I've said, it's still amazing that we are looking right now at Nico Mirotic on the Pelicans and us having a first round pick. When the whole punching Bobby Portis punching him thing happened, I thought they were going to trade him away for like pennies. It's just kind of amazing to think about.
I honestly thought when that happened that they were going to have to buy him out. And he was just going to walk away.
That crossed my mind too.
So kudos to John Paxson for being able to pull something for him. Yeah. And I just did an NBA draft lottery simulator. I just pressed it one time, and it's hilarious how this worked out. So in this simulation, Cleveland gets the number 1 overall pick, which is their pick that they got from Brooklyn. So they would get the number 1 pick. The Celtics would get the number 2 pick, which is what they got from the Lakers. And the Bulls would get number 3. And that would be hilarious because those would be, Cleveland and Boston are definitely 2 very good teams, and they would get the number 1 and number 2 picks. And the Bulls are a team that's on the rise with arguably the best young core in basketball, and they would add the number 3 pick. It would be, good teams getting better, and then it would be Phoenix, Dallas, Atlanta, Orlando. So it'd be those teams that are just intentionally tanking, coming up the rear.
Yeah.
I would enjoy that, even though I don't want to see Cleveland and Boston get better. I would enjoy watching teams not get rewarded for tanking.
Yeah, I know, right? Look at it. If that happened, I mean, yeah, it would really benefit Boston. But you think about Cleveland, you think about they're probably going to lose LeBron and several other things. So I guess it would just kind of be a head start for them. But yeah, it would definitely make Boston, that's already good and is going to be good, better. No doubt about that.
I'm starting to hear more and more rumors that LeBron is going to stay.
I'll believe it when I see it. I
don't know where he would go.
LA, that's where I think.
But the problem is if he goes to LA, he's not going to the NBA Finals anytime soon.
I know that, but I just right now I am struggling seeing him staying in Cleveland. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I don't know. I don't have a feeling he's going to stay, but I could be wrong. I really could be. This actually, if I could just ask this now, one of my friends who's a loyal listener to the show actually had a question for us along these lines, and it was about NBA players, and he wanted us to say what we think about, do we think it's good that the popularity of players over teams is good or bad for the NBA?
Is it good for the NBA? I think it's great for the NBA because the NBA doesn't really care. They just want to see superstars and getting these superstar teams that people love together in the finals. If you think about when Jordan was winning titles, it was, 1, maybe 2 superstars on the team, and a lot of superstars never got to see titles. Now you've got 3, 4 superstars on teams, and you're seeing more superstar faces in the finals, and that's people, and so they get more exposure. NBA loves it. They don't care where these guys go. Teams, on the other hand, probably don't like it as much, because you're seeing, if you're a big fan of Jimmy Butler and he gets traded, you're like, okay, well, then I'm going to get a Jimmy Butler Timberwolves jersey. I don't care about if it's a Bulls jersey or not. And that's not good for actual teams. So it's a funny balance. I remember growing up, different sport, but you rooted for your local football team. So everybody was a Bears fan. And your favorite player was a Bears player. And if that player left, then he was no longer your favorite player. And you picked a new Bears player. And you rooted for the Bears because you lived here. And now you're starting to see like, people live in Chicago and they grow up and they're like, well, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are really good. So I'm going to root for the Packers and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of that now.
And somebody who's never been to Green Bay or maybe even Wisconsin in their entire lives are walking around with a stupid Aaron Rodgers jersey in Chicago. And you're like, that's the way it is, with social media and, when I grew up is you watched the game or your parents let you stay up late enough to watch the news and the news would play the highlights. But most of the time they didn't let you stay up late enough to watch the news. But now you've got smartphones and internet connections and you can watch hot takes and web gems and all these things. So you just see these highlights. And if your local team doesn't have all these highlights, you start rooting for somebody else. And I don't know. I think it's it's good for the leagues, but individual teams and diehard fans, probably not as good.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. I think the NBA is finding ways to make plenty of money just based on superstars. Because think about it, if everyone's a fan of a superstar, like if you're a LeBron fan and he goes from Cleveland to Miami, when he went to Miami and when Bosch went to Miami, think about all the money the NBA made by the new ticket sales there, the jersey, the merchandise, the sponsors. That gets you a lot of cash. And you're going to see other superstars move around, whether LeBron does or not. But think about all the free agents this coming. If there are a bunch of diehard fans of Paul George and Kevin Durant and they go other places, it's going to be a lot more money in your pocket. So I think from a financial standpoint for the league as a whole, yeah, it's fine. But like you said about the teams, that's true. And you're also right about this day and age in sports. I think this day and age, you're seeing a lot of sports fans that are fickle about teams but are loyal to a set of players. I mean, hey, if the Bears get really good and they start winning titles and, Jordan Howard or Mitch Trubisky becomes one of the best in the league, guess what? You're going to see a lot of people that's never been to Chicago. You're going to see them wearing their jerseys, buying their merchandise, and doing that. That's really just kind of how sports is. Though I think in the NBA, the whole fan of a superstar thing is stronger by far than any other sport, with football being the second.
Yeah, and because basketball is a sport where one player can dominate an entire game, more so than, I don't think any other sport you can do that. Not a single other sport or one player can absolutely dominate like they can in the NBA. They also don't have masks like in football and hockey, face recognition. But the big thing with the NBA is China. China is a huge market for the NBA, and they don't care about the teams. They don't care about the teams at all. They care about players. I mean, one of the biggest stars in China is Derrick Rose, and he's terrible. And he's been on how many different teams in the last 3 years? 4?
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. I mean, basketball has that advantage of being that international type thing. You think about Michael Jordan. He had plenty of fans around the world.
So, yeah, I mean, that's, it's the NBA. It's a good question. I think the NBA probably benefits more from, superstars being superstars, no matter what team they are. But other sports, I think you get, better traction if a player's on a team, especially baseball. Baseball's a lot more traditional than any other sports. And I think hockey is another one where if a player changes hands, I don't think there was a lot of guys that stayed Marian Hossa fans when he left. Was he in Pittsburgh? Where was he before Detroit? Was he?
Yeah, because remember, he lost to the Detroit Red Wings in the 2008 finals on the Penguins. Then he went to he was on he was on the Penguins. He lost to Detroit. Then he went to Detroit, then lost to the Penguins.
Oh yeah, because he's only in Pittsburgh 1 year, so he was Atlanta before that. So he was in Ottawa, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and then the Blackhawks.
Right.
Is there anybody walking around in Chicago with a Detroit or Pittsburgh or Atlanta Marian Hossa jersey? No. Do you think any of those players or any of those fans were like, let me go out? I love Hossa. Let me go out and get a Hossa Blackhawks jersey. No. And so I think basketball is unique in that probably football is sneaking up to that, where you're like, you know what? I love this player. He left, to go somewhere else. I'm gonna stay a fan of him. I think it's probably those two sports, and the other one's kind of way, way far behind. It's more of a team than a player.
Yeah, I only think when that happens in baseball, I mean, they didn't really have fan jerseys back then, but Babe Ruth was one of the examples where people all over the country followed him because he was so revolutionary. But you just don't see that as much with baseball because, there'll be some bandwagon Cub fans when they got really good. There'll be other bandwagon fans of other good teams. I'm sure that there'll be some people are like, oh, I like the Yankees now that they got Stanton. But I don't think there's anyone out there who's going to be like, oh, yeah, I love this player. Wherever he goes, I'm buying a new... You just don't really see that as much in baseball as you do in other sports.
No, and, it's funny. I mean, maybe I'm the old-fashioned guy, but if there's a player I really love on my team and he goes somewhere else, saying he's dead to me is a little bad, but I almost stop, I just don't pay attention anymore. Mark Grace was one of my all-time favorite players, and when he left the Cubs, I couldn't tell you a single stat after he left. I don't even remember how long he played. It was just like, oh, he's not a Cub anymore. Move on to somebody, a new fandom.
Well, they got a World Series ring.
I knew that, but it wasn't like I couldn't tell you how many games he played in that series, and I don't know anything. But I could tell you a lot of his Cubs stats and things that he did with the Cubs, and so it's for me, it's for players on one of my favorite players on another or on my team, and he moves away, I sort of stop caring.
I'm kind of that way too with some players, while others I may just kind of check up on how they're doing. But I'll be honest with myself. I'll always wish guys that I really liked, wherever Jake Arrieta goes, I'll wish him the best. I wish Dexter Fowler the best, but I'm one of those people where I'm like, despite the fact that I want to wish you the best, when you play us, I hope we just knock you down. Not trying to sound bad, but look, I wish Dexter Fowler all the best in St. Louis. I hope he does really well, but when he plays the Cubs, I hope he strikes out 4 times. I know it sounds kind of weird, but that's just kind of how I am.
Yeah, I'm very similar. So with Mark Grace, I didn't have any bad feelings, and I wasn't bummed out that he got a World Series. I just stopped paying attention. It was I just focus on something else. And same thing with Dexter Fowler is I'm always going to like Dexter Fowler.
Me too. How can you not?
He's a huge part of Cubs history, even though he's only here a short time. And he's just a very likable guy and has a really nice family, and it's hard to dislike him. But when he left the Cubs, I just stopped paying attention. When they play the Cubs, when he's playing St. Louis plays the Cubs, I'm going to pay extra attention when he's batting. But if they're playing the Brewers, couldn't tell you what he did unless I see a highlight on TV. I'm not watching for it.
Yeah, I usually find out what he does based on me following the NL Central when I'm looking at standings. That's basically what I look at. But it's just weird because Dexter Fowler, for example, again, I'm going to go back to Dexter Fowler. He's incredibly likable, and I cannot blame him one bit for going to St. Louis. I know it sucks, but hey, he deserved a payday, and naturally, what are you going to do? when you have the opportunity to get a payday, you're going to take it. It's natural. He had every right to. So I have no ill feelings toward that. But for some reason, I hate when former players torch my team. It just bothers me for some reason. I don't have a logical explanation for it, unless it's like somebody like I really didn't like. Like I can't really think of an example right now, but when Julius Peppers left the Bears, every time I saw him in a Packers uniform do anything, like I just wanted to throw up. But that's a little bit of a different situation. While situations with, say, Alshon Jeffrey, love him, was really happy for him when he got a ring. Dexter Fowler, just to name a few. If they do something against my team, it just irks me for some reason. But I still like the guy. It's so weird. Does that make any sense? I know it really doesn't.
No, it makes total sense. But while we're starting to talk baseball, let's transition over to spring training a little bit. So the pitchers and catchers reported, 2 weeks ago now, and the games have started. So the Cubs, I think, would have played 3 games so far.
Yes.
And I think the Sox have followed suit, but we're really not seeing a lot of regulars. And for the Cubs, you haven't seen your starting rotation play yet. But it's weird. Is Joe Madden apparently said that he's going to announce the opening day starter this week, even though he hasn't seen anybody pitch yet in games. But he's Joe. He knows what he's doing.
And I mean, do they really have to prove anything? Lester, Quintana, Yu Darvish, Kyle Hendricks. I don't think they really have anything to prove. My opinion has been, if you spun a wheel and you selected one of those guys just by random, you could argue for them being an opening day starter.
Oh, I totally agree. It's more of a setting up the rotation of how you want it, and if you figure it, like, at least you'd want to see everybody pitch one game or a few innings against a live opponent to kind of help make that decision.
Yeah, no, I get that too. I think the way he's watched them I know games and warm-ups are very different, but my guess is that he just has a really good idea of what they're going to bring early on already. Just based on that, not even based on the past. But, I'm not one to question him.
So who did you think the opening day starter was going to be?
I think it's going to be Lester still. I think that it's still his rotation.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Lester, and Hendricks will get the home opener. As an honor, even though he's probably I don't know, he might be the best pitcher on the I don't know, it's hard to say, man, but he's at least, I think he's a better pitcher than John Lester at this point, and he's got tenure with his team over Quintana or Darvish. So you think that you'd probably honor him by giving him the home opener?
Yeah, I mean, is that how it's gonna? I guess he'd have to structure it to work it out that way, because it's a 10-game road trip to start the season. So I guess he'd structure it that way. In my opinion, though, like it really just doesn't matter to me. But I'm not the manager, so I can't really give a solid reasoning. I just say any choice for me really works because they got a lot of good pitchers. But when it just comes to the home opener, like I've said, I think John Lester is going to have a really nice bounce back year. I think he's too good to do what he did last year twice. And I still would argue that he was hurt last year for a number of games. So he's still the leader. He's still the veteran. That's just the way I see it. But if you went Kyle Hendricks, I wouldn't argue for the home opener or the season opener. If you went Yu Darvish, I wouldn't argue that either. If you went Quintana, fine.
I think probably the only one it wouldn't even be a real argument per se. The only one I might raise my eyebrow about is Darvish getting the opening day start, just because he's only been here for 10 minutes. I think it's sort of an honor to get that opening day start, and to hand it to Darvish would be, I don't know, it would be a little bit of a slight, I think, to two pitchers that have been here for a while and another one who played half the season for you last year. And Darvish is just signed, a few days ago. So that would be my only one, but talent wise, you can't pick one from the other, really. Any of them could be opening day starter for most teams.
Yeah, definitely. If you were to say, what do you think is the popular opinion? Who would you think it is among fans? Like if you took a poll among Cub fans and you thought the number one selection would be so-and-so, who do you think it would be?
I would have to say that Lester would get the vast majority. And I think between Hendricks and Lester, you'd probably have at least 83% of the votes between those two. And I would say that Lester probably gets a little more.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think a lot of people still like Lester. And I think that Kyle Hendricks would probably be the number 2 choice as well. I could definitely agree with all that. Like I said, I think it's going to be John Lester. And I think Kyle Hendricks has the next best chance to John Lester. But knowing Joe, knowing the way he is, I'm going to kind of expect him to be like, it's going to be Quintana. I mean, it's Joe. He does that stuff. So, though I have my prediction, I guess expect anything of the 4. I mean, obviously it's not going to be Tyler Chatwood, but any of the other 4. I think. And
if Joe tries to spin, well, we're going to give our best matchup against the lineup, you're going to be like, they play the Marlins. You could throw me out there and they got a fighting chance. If they were playing St. Louis or, somebody, the Brewers or the Dodgers or somebody like that, where, the game matters. Like it's going to be a competitive game. Then you're like, all right, who's going to be our best matchup against this team? But it's the Marlins. So if Joe tries to pull I'm going to try to get our best matchup here. He's just, yanking your chain.
Yeah, I think it would be just kind of him giving a reason because he realized he needs a reason, but there really isn't much of one considering how talented your lineup is and considering that you are playing the Marlins, which is going to be interesting because opening day is going to be like at 11 in the morning local time.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. Why is opening day in the middle of a day on Thursday?
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting, though, because Marlins Park is going to be like 90% Cub fans.
Oh, I know. It's going to be so many Cub fans.
Because why would you want to go to a Marlins game this year? They're going to be really, really bad.
And their team, the ownership is basically told your city that they're trying to rip the city off as far as their percentage of what they get for the sale of the team. And they just don't, they've basically told the fans they don't care about you.
Pretty much. I mean, you're not wrong there. Look at both Florida teams. Look at what the Rays are doing right now.
Yeah, it's a bad time. I mean, most times it's a bad time to be a Florida sports or a Florida baseball fan, but right now it's real bad.
It's probably as bad as it's ever been if you factor in both teams because, the Marlins don't have a winning history, but they have 2 World Series, and during that time, the Rays did nothing. And then when the Marlins started getting bad, the Rays started getting good. They made it to a World Series. They won several division titles. Now you're seeing both teams who are already struggling to get revenue through sales and tickets and yada yada, both doing the same selling off. And the few fans that each team does have are like, screw this. Why would we want to support this? And that neither team is going to be good anytime soon. Though the funny thing is, at least the Marlins in their last few trades have gotten something back, while the Rays are literally just giving stuff away.
Oh, absolutely. But Cubs, would you say that probably the biggest concern with fans right now is who's going to be the leadoff hitter?
Yeah.
That'll probably be, and then it's still a major concern of mine. I think they've got a very talented roster. I think you've got enough options at closer to not have a void. But the one for me is who's going to be your leadoff hitter, and based on these first couple games, the first man up is going to be Ian Happ.
I'm not as worried about leadoff as some other people are, just because the team has so much talent across the board. And even last year without Fowler, they were among the top of the league in scoring, though the scoring was a little more inconsistent. I'll give you that. They went through stretches where they'd score 17 a game and then none. It wasn't as spread out as 2016 or 2015, but it's going to be an issue they're going to have to work with, and I think you're going to see a lot more of this leadoff by committee. You're going to see Ian Happ lead off some games. You're going to see Albert Almora. This is going to be his year to prove himself as an everyday player and a top-of-the-order player, and I know there's a lot of questions there about him, though I feel pretty good about him, I must say. You're probably going to see Ben Zobrist lead off a few games. There is going to be no clear-cut guy, and it was kind of a hard thing to address this offseason, but I get it's a concern. It's something I'm thinking about, but I'm not worried about it. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm staying up night, worried about it, but it is a concern, and I think the offense does get generated by having a good leadoff man. I think Dexter Fowler showed that having the you go we go. It wasn't so much that it's Dexter Fowler; it's that leadoff position. I think is an important one. Like you said, they had statistically they were a very good offensive team last year, but you're right. They was very inconsistent, and there was a lot of stretches where the Cubs just really, really struggled on offense. And I think having consistent quality at-bats at the leadoff position will help drive a more consistent offense. And my big concern is that I don't like Ian Happ at that position. I think he strikes out way too much to be a quality leadoff hitter.
I like Ian Happ's potential as a player, but I definitely agree with the whole leadoff thing with him. I think Albert Almora has a higher ceiling at the leadoff position than Ian Happ does. Ian Happ is going to be a power hitter. He proved it last year. He's a power hitter. Albert Almora, though he's shown a little pop in his bat, we've seen him just hit a lot of line drive rockets for base hits. If he can get his walk rate up, then that's kind of the guy you want in the leadoff spot. So I think his ceiling of being a leadoff guy is much higher than Happ's.
I mean, the one thing about Happ is I think he's the fastest player on the team. I think he's one of the faster players in the league, if I read that correctly. But so it's nice to have the speed on the base path. But you're right. I like Albert Almora. And in days that he's not in the lineup, Ben Zobrist being the leadoff hitter, just because he's a guy mentally that doesn't batting first, fifth, fourth, ninth. It doesn't matter. He comes out there and is a professional hitter. You don't worry about him getting overwhelmed by the position or overthinking it. He just goes out there and hits. I think, and you're right. I think Almora, he's more of a line drive hitter, and he's got enough speed to do, to have, when he gets on base is to keep them honest. And, if you got your Bryants and your Rizzos and your Happs and your Schwarbers batting behind him, those guys hit a ball and he's going to be able to take that extra base. He's not going to be held back.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting that you bring up speed because, for so long, the tradition of the leadoff guy was a speedy, slappy hitter type guy. For me, in this day and age, I think it's just important just to get on base because you see the whole stolen base thing. It's not really that relevant much anymore in baseball. Smart base running is much more important, and especially on a team like the Cubs, if you get on base, guess who's hitting right behind you? Bryant and Rizzo. So if they do what they do, you're not going to have to steal because they too are going to do things that are going to help you score. I think that what's really important is the smart base running, because look at Chris Bryant. He's got some underrated speed, but he's not like a speedster. He's not like Willie Mays Hayes, but you see how smartly he runs the bases, and that makes a huge, huge difference. And that's kind of what I'm looking at in a leadoff hitter. Not necessarily the guy who just zooms down like Tony Campana or Billy Hamilton, because you saw them, you see them. They're really fast, but they're not really good hitters. But some of these other guys are smart base runners. That's what I like.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's old thinking. It was more of a my one of my big concerns with Schwarber being the leadoff guy last year was he's really slow, and you don't want to be in a position where if you think about it, is the best base runner on the team is probably Jason Hayward. Would you say? As far as
I think him and Brian are the best base runners.
And you saw Jason Hayward is not a speedster either, but he's got enough speed. And you see the difference in when he's on base and good things happen. You don't have that intangible with Kyle Schwarber. He's not going to get that extra base, and it's not a stolen base type thing. It's if there's a hard single that's where you turn halfway to second and you think about going, you don't. Is that guy going to third, staying at second, or is he rounding and going home? And having a guy with some wheels on there definitely helps in those type situations. It also makes the outfielders change the way they do things. If you've got a guy that when he rounds third is got enough wheels and enough base running savvy that he knows what he's doing, you see him round that base, and it changes that outfielder where he's going with the ball, and that opens up an opportunity for a single to be stretched into a double. So they're just some intangibles as far as good things happen when good base running and good base runners are on. And that was my big concern about Schwarber being a leadoff. And Hap's got wheels. I don't know how good of a base runner he is. I haven't paid enough attention.
I'll look at the stats.
But ideally you would like to see Jason Hayward be able to bat well enough to be a leadoff hitter, because getting him on base, he's a great base runner. Great base runner.
I was literally just going to say about Jason Hayward when you were talking about the leadoff, because I thought when he came to the Cubs, when he signed with the Cubs, and we thought that Dexter Fowler was going to be gone, I'm like, well, there's our leadoff hitter. It's going to be Jason Hayward. That didn't happen right away because of Dexter Fowler coming back. And then he really struggled in 2016, so he wasn't really an option for 2017 until we could see that he vastly improved. Last year, he slashed 259, 326, 389, which is pretty average numbers. Not something you really want in the leadoff. But it's frustrating because, man, if he had a season, or if he can have a season like he had in St. Louis, 293, 359 on base, or like some of his Atlanta years when he was having on base percentages of 350 to 360, that would be a great leadoff option for you because of the base running. That would be kind of your problem solver, because we know he's not going to hit home runs, even if he does bounce back, and I think he can. If he has a good season, he'll never be a big home run hitter. I mean, his best year of home runs was 27. That was the only time he hit over 20. So he would be the perfect leadoff guy if we could just get what he was late in his Atlanta years and in St. Louis. That's what's frustrating about this.
Yeah, he would be my ideal guy if you can get that on base percentage up to around 355, 360. But I don't know. I don't know what you're going to get. And you hope that he forces the issue with the quality of his play, because if you can get him in the leadoff spot and he's getting on base, that makes it so much better because when you have him at the bottom of the order and he does get on base, you have he's towards the bottom of the the roster, and the batting order, and you're not getting these quality guys batting behind him, and you don't get to utilize that base running ability as much. You get him on in front of, Schwarber and Rizzo and Bryan and Happ and Zobrist. Then suddenly you're like, all right, well now we can utilize that base running. That would be ideal. And then if you get that quality bat going, suddenly then you've got a better quality bat batting down at the bottom of the roster, the batting order. It makes for a much better, batting order if you can get a guy like Jason Hayward going.
Absolutely. Now, we were talking about base running, and when I look at base running, probably one of my favorite statistics is UBR, which is from Fangraphs. I'm sure. Have you heard of Fangraphs? Or not Fangraphs. Have you heard of UBR? I know you've heard of Fangraphs.
Yeah, I know Fangraphs. I know UBR. I'm usually a hitting and defensive stats guy. But base running, I know the statistic. I just I don't use it very much.
Yeah, that's fair. I get that. Now, I know that a lot of these advanced statistics are somewhat subject, especially like wins above replacement, though I think UBR is a pretty good way to measure base running. And Chris Bryant is a 4.8 UBR. That is tied for the best in the National League.
Wow. I mean, I knew he was a good base runner, but that's impressive.
I mean, he was a fantastic base runner last year. You know who the second best is on the Cubs based on UBR?
Rizzo?
Nope.
I don't know. Oh, well,
Javi Baez.
Oh yeah, he's a really good base runner too.
2.8.
Yeah, he's a very what's Jason Hayward?
Hayward last year, he was only a 0.2, but the year before he was a 1.3 in St. Louis, he was a 3.1, and in 2012 with the Braves, he was a 6.3.
Yeah, he's a good base runner. He's a really good base runner. I would like to see him on base more at the top of the order. That would be a big deal for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And you were also wondering about Ian Happ's base running. His UBR is negative 0.4, but he is also a rookie last year, so you figure there's going to be some room for improvement there. But Chris Bryant, I mean, I can't say enough about his base running. If you look at his UBR total in just 3 years, it's 11.5 cumulative.
I mean, he's an all-around good baseball player.
Yes, he is.
And he's a nice guy too. So it's you like to see that as a face of your franchise.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what's funny? You look at these high UBR numbers. You know how many stolen bases Brian had last year? 7.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about stolen bases. In fact, I mean, it's nice to be able to steal bases because there's sometimes where in those low scoring games or when you're facing a top pitcher, getting a guy in scoring position, even if it's a fluke single or an error getting on first, having the ability to steal a base really does give you a better odds of winning. But I'm not one of those, you need a Vince Coleman on your team, you need a Ricky Henderson on your team, steal 90 bases. You don't need that. And, I think there's even statistics show that, that many stolen bases don't really necessarily benefit you.
Well, yeah, and especially since you figure stealing a base, the process of stealing a base is risky because there are also going to be many times when you go from having a base runner to having nobody on base and an extra out, thus decreasing your scoring chance. So, smart base running, in my opinion, I don't know the exact numbers, but it pays off more than a stolen base because there are going to be the higher chance of failure is there with stealing bases than just smart base running. Like going first to third, you double your scoring chance more or less right there, while stealing a base. Yeah, you could increase your chance right there by going into scoring position, but at the same time, there's also the chance you're going to be thrown out, and then that chance is completely gone.
Yeah, and my thing with that is if you can add, a decent set of wheels along with smart base running, gives you a really good chance.
Oh yeah, that's even better.
And I like, that's why I like the option of you're never going to bat Chris Bryant as your leadoff guy regularly. You may do it here or there, but as a novelty Joe thing, but you're never going to do it regularly. But if you can get Hayward to do it, I think you'll have fantastic results. I really do. If you can get his on base percentage up to where you want it to be, you're going to see just absolutely fantastic results.
You want to know something else a little interesting? Going back to the whole stolen bases thing, I'm looking at the leaders, basically, of baseball, and there's really team leaders, not just one player, just teams' total stolen bases. You look at the number of stolen bases, there's really no correlation whatsoever. Some good teams like the Nationals and Red Sox and Diamondbacks have a lot of stolen bases, while teams like the Cubs don't have a lot of stolen bases. The Rockies didn't have a lot of stolen bases. They were playoff teams. Now, some of the few stealing bases teams weren't very good, like the A's and the Orioles. But like the Yankees were in the middle. The Indians were in the middle. The Cardinals were in the middle. The Dodgers were like on the cusp of being of the lower third. So there's really no correlation to it.
Yeah, and I mean, I imagine Cincinnati is fairly high on that list of stolen bases.
They're third.
And they're terrible.
You won't believe who number one was.
Marlins?
Nope. The Angels. Yeah.
Really?
With Trout hurt for a number of time, Pujols can't even walk down to first. I mean, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I guess I don't watch enough Angels baseball to, put that together.
Their leading steal guy was Cameron Maybin, and he only played 93 games with the Angels last year.
Yeah, well, they're still going to suck next year, so.
At least it'll be a little more entertaining.
You hope.
Yeah.
At least for the sake of Southern California baseball fans.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I mean, not much else to talk about with baseball, I don't think.
No.
You still haven't seen your hopeful young players for the White Sox really do much yet. So once they get a few more at bats or a few more innings pitched, we'll have some things to talk about that. Would you want to talk about the Blackhawks or Bears next?
We could go Hawks.
So they're awful. And I heard was it in the radio or did I read it on, I think I heard it on the radio. And they said about the Hawks, they're like, well, the Hawks have taken 2 of their last 3 games. And I was like, all right, well, I get you're saying that. I don't know what are you trying to say that in terms of making this still exciting, or that people should, still be caring as much as they did at the beginning of the season, or if this is a playoff run, or what was the purpose of that? Because sure, they won 2 of their last 3 games, but they've only won 3 of their 13 games in February.
Yeah. It just seems like fake optimism to me, or just like, hey, yay, they did that. Whoa. Still not making the playoffs, but yay.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bad team. I mean, you look at some of the losses that they've had, they're just ugly. The Arizona loss,
Ugh.
The Vegas loss, the LA Kings loss wasn't even nice. I mean, none of these. The Minnesota loss 3-0. These are just ugly games. They're not playing well.
Yeah, it just seems like they're, I don't want to say checked out, but I think everyone on that team is ready for the season to be over. I think a lot of fans would feel that way as well. Though, I gotta say, I've been enjoying watching some of the youngsters like Schmaltz and DeBrincat play. I mean, they're the ones really doing stuff.
Well, they need to. I mean, they need to show that, hey, look at us. We're going to be the next wave of players to lead this team. They still haven't made the money yet. They still haven't made the fandom, the name of the league yet. So they've got to do these things. They can't rest on their laurels. Whereas, other guys, they can. Even if Taves stinks down the rest of the stretch, is he still going to be a big name in the league, and he's still going to be one of the highest paid players?
Yeah, no doubt. I know he's frustrated, but he doesn't really have to worry about being cut or anything like that, or I don't think he's really going to worry about being traded, because I don't think they're going to trade him no matter what.
Yeah, and so you can't trade him. He's got a full no trade clause, and that's going to be the problem. So we're recording this on Sunday night, and tomorrow afternoon is the trade deadline, and I have a feeling that you're going to see the Blackhawks be sellers. But what do you really have to move?
It's going to be nothing major. I don't think it's going to be anything major. We could be completely wrong, but I don't think it's going to be anything major.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's going to waive their no trade clause. It's going to be at biggest you trade Anisimov. I mean, that's unless it's Ryan Hartman, which I think is a mistake. But I thought they already moved Michael Kempney, and I thought that was a mistake. I don't understand that move.
It to me just felt like a move that was a move.
I mean, he's the guy that propped up, Brent Seabrook the best this season, and you move him, so you're gonna see worse and worse Brent Seabrook. That's possible.
Yeah, like I said, I don't really know what that was. I don't really have an answer for it. It just kind of happened. Not really trying to make sense because I don't know. But yeah, when you said who could potentially be moved, Anisimov has always been my guy that I think would be a good trade chip, but with his contract and the no trade clause, it's not going to be easy to do, so I don't know if I could fully count on it. The way I see it is, if he didn't have a full no trade clause, he would probably be like the first major piece to be moved, because I'm sure there are plenty of playoff teams that could use a center that can score. That's a veteran.
Yeah, I'm looking at Mark Lazarus right now, and he's saying that many teams are interested in picking up Ryan Hartman. I just don't understand why you would trade him. It's a down year this year, sure, but basically you're going to be selling low, and he's not going to cost you a lot next year, and at worst he's a solid third line player. I just don't understand, why you'd move him. Anisimov, I get, because he's got a good, salary price there, and it's not like he's helping you that his helping you versus his salary is not the proportion where it should be.
Right. I mean, yeah, like I said earlier in the season, before I really knew the details of his contract, I thought he'd be like the ideal trade chip to start with. And when it comes to Ryan Hartman, his value really isn't high right now. He's been pretty bad at times, but I don't think it'd be worth losing him if like the offer was like a third or fourth round pick. Like that wouldn't really do much for you. That would just be another trade to make a trade.
Yeah, I don't know unless it was another young player that with plus a pick, maybe. But I just don't understand why you'd move him.
Unless he was part of a package deal. I mean,
Like you sent him to get rid of Seabrook.
right. Like if you made a package with someone, whether it's Seabrook and Isimov or something, and they wanted to throw Hartman in, but they'd give you a good return, then I'd see it. But just him alone, you wouldn't get much.
Yeah, but I do think you're going to see the Blackhawks make some moves, if nothing else, to just bring some new blood in. But I mean, they're definitely not going to be buyers. They might even just stand pat. Who knows? Is Stan Bowman a lame duck GM at this point? I don't know. I don't know what the inside goings on of the Blackhawks organization are right now, but they're definitely not going to be buyers. That's the only thing I can guarantee.
Yeah, definitely. No way they're going to be buyers. Here's what's frustrating. The Hawks are tied in with some really bad contracts. If they weren't tied in with those contracts and they were able to move like Seabrook and Keith or something like that easier, you would have a pretty young core around to like turn things around fairly quick. But with these tied down contracts, it might be a little harder to do that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really hard to do that. You're saddled with some of these contracts, and I just want to clarify is, they're bad contracts because of where the players are in their career, but when these are guys that have helped the Blackhawks win 3, almost 4 Stanley Cups, should have been 4 Stanley Cups,
Should have been 4. Yeah.
That stretch run is amazing. And you don't do it without Seabrook. You don't do it without Keith.
Oh, they were heroes. And they were all-stars for so many years.
So you don't do it without those guys. And now, it's hard to hate on them, but what they're being paid for what they're providing you is just not in line. And in a hard salary cap sport, it really handcuffs you. That's the position the Blackhawks are in, and I think that's where a lot of frustration is for Blackhawks fans.
You couldn't have said it better. I mean, we can't hate Keith or Seabrook. We will always love them for what they did. But right now, they got old. They have billions of miles on them. That's what happens to those kind of players. And unfortunately, they're under contract for a while, and they're making a lot of money. That's not a great situation right now. It was for many years, but not anymore. Like, nothing lasts forever. And that's the situation with them. But you have them, and they're going to be around. Unless they find some sucker to take them away and take away that salary. I mean, if somebody traded for Seabrook and we didn't get crap in return, but we got that contract and that money just off the books, I hate to say it, but it'd probably be worth it at this point.
And when we got rid of Brian Campbell the first time, that helped propel the Blackhawks into being, into championships.
Yeah,
is you had to get that albatross contract off the books, and hopefully you can do that again. And it is nothing against me liking Keith and Seabrook, not liking them as players or people. It's that they're old, and they just can't do the things that they used to do, and the money they're making makes it hard to prop them up with more players around them. So unless you've just got a stable of young defensemen, which they don't, and not a lot of teams do, you got to pay guys, and they don't have a solid top 4 defenseman.
right. And a lot of their young defensemen that they drafted recently are ways away from the NHL. And think about not only Brian Campbell, but think about that whole post-2010 breakup. You had to trade Ladd. You had to get rid of Versteeg. You had to get rid of Bufflin. You had to get rid of Campbell. You let Niemi walk. You had to do all that stuff. Players that were heroes, players that contributed to that first championship. But after they moved on, that freed up some stuff. And then look what happened. They had their best run in franchise history from 2013 to 2015.
Yeah, absolutely. The Blackhawks modeled themselves after the Detroit Red Wings to get to this dominant decade of play. But sadly, they're following the Red Wings blueprint into sub-mediocrity post that run.
The one saving grace we have is that we're realizing that we're not what we used to be pretty quickly, where the Red Wings, for the past 7 years, they were clearly past their prime, but Detroit kept trying to go at it. They were so concerned about that playoff streak being kept alive, where they made veteran, overpaid teams just enough to reach the playoffs and then get bounced right away. At least if we start making moves now, we won't be even further down the road than the Red Wings are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay rebuilding. I'm okay spending a couple years out of the playoffs if it means getting back to being competitive sooner. I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
just
me too.
getting to the playoffs to get to the playoffs doesn't mean anything to me. It's if you know your team has zero chance of making it, then I don't care. So like if, in the NBA, if you're going to be the eighth seed and you're going to have to face, Golden State or whoever, you just know they've 0% chance of winning the finals. So why are you cheering your team on? You cheer your team on because you cheer your team on, but why are you going to be especially excited because you know you can't win it? You can root your team on and be excited that they're there, but don't go crazy because it's all about winning titles.
Yeah, we know the process now. As Chicago sports fans, we've seen rebuilding processes work on multiple levels, whether it's the Cubs or the Blackhawks, soon to be the White Sox, hopefully soon to be the Bulls and the Bears. So I think there'd be much more accepting of, well, if we have to step away, if it's for the long haul, then yeah, fine. There are a lot of Hawks fans that are, on top of that, there's also a lot of Hawks fans that are really anti-rebuild and are like, no, that's not, you're not a real fan if you want. It's like, you gotta wake up and smell the coffee that not everything lasts forever and things are eventually going to have to change. And the sooner you change for the better it will be. Again, look at the Red Wings. They tried to salvage every season they could, even though their chances of winning a title were never great. They gave big contracts to old players. They celebrated when they got their playoff streak continued. But at the end of the day, everyone knew they were pretty mediocre and they would just get bounced right away in the first round. You don't want that.
It's not that hard to make the playoffs if that's what your goal is. It's to compete in the playoffs is where it's hard. And that's what the Red Wings did is they competed or they put a team together to make the playoffs, and you don't want that. It's as a fan, as a diehard fan, as a casual fan, it might be more exciting because you're like, oh, our team's in the playoffs, and then they lose. You're like, oh, okay, no big deal, we lost, but we made the playoffs. For real diehard fans, I think it's frustrating. It's really frustrating is that you don't have a chance, and you still go to the playoffs. It's really frustrating. Like we'll look at NFL. People are like, oh, well, Lovey had a good record and he got fired, and all these other coaches have come in and been terrible and they got to stay. Lovey was a coach that could get you somewhere or get you to the playoffs or get you to stay in a few games, and but he was not going to put you over the top. He was not going to win you a Super Bowl. And that got to the point where, all right, enough is enough. We've lingered with mediocrity long enough. They didn't make the playoffs. 10-6, they didn't make the playoffs. And even if they did, they would have got bounced in the first game.
Yeah. Because when they had to play the Packers?
I don't remember, probably. But they would have lost. They would have lost that game because Lovey was not a very good coach. In case in point, look at what he did after he left the Bears. Stunk in Tampa, stinks at U of I.
Well, to be fair, U of I, he has nothing to work with. But yeah, I mean, you're definitely right about Lovey on the NFL scale. He had his time. His time was due. You knew that you had to go in another direction. Unfortunately, they didn't go in the right direction after that. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
So you just don't want something like that with the Blackhawks, where they just linger in mediocrity. It's better to burn out than fade away.
I agree. I definitely agree. That's what I keep trying to say. I don't want to sound like, I'm not a real fan, let's watch him lose, blah, blah, blah. No, you got to realize the situation here. Like I've said before, there is nothing worse in sports than being mediocre. It's better to be bad and rebuild than just be stuck in the middle. Whether it's hockey, whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball. Football's a little different because football's built a little differently, but especially for things like the NHL, you don't want to be mediocre and you don't want to be stuck in mediocrity.
No. And and I'm a huge Blackhawks fan. I love the Hawks. But you know what? I spent a long time not knowing what it was like to have your team win a Stanley Cup. And now it is a beautiful feeling. It is addictive. And I want more of it. And I would much rather have them not make the playoffs a couple seasons if it gets them back to a place where they could win another Stanley Cup, because going to championship parades and seeing your team hoist the cup and knowing your team's name is on it, it feels good. It feels good, and I want more of that.
Yeah, think about it. Put this in perspective. Let's wind the clocks back exactly 10 years ago, 2008. Our dream was to finally see a Stanley Cup. That's all we wanted to see. Now we're looking back at a run of Stanley Cups and saying, well, crap, we should have had 4. Like, you just think about that.
I love it. I want more of it. It was amazing. In that stretch with the salary cap era, that was an absolutely dominant run the Blackhawks had.
It's funny. I was watching the women win the gold the other night, staying up late, watching intense overtime, and it made me think of those Blackhawks games. And I thought, man, come April, when they're not in it, I am going to miss the hell out of this.
Yep. And with the Blackhawks, here's the list of players that they can move. I mean, of the current roster, they can move anybody from their minor league system, but Tommy Wingles, Lance Boma, Patrick Sharp, Jan Ruda, Thomas Yurko, Vinny Hinostroza, Ryan Hartman, and Anthony Duclair.
Not a lot to select from.
These two guys could be moved, Brandon Saad and Artem Anisimov.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're moving Brandon Saad.
I'm 50-50 on that. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but I could also see them not.
You better bring back a hell of a return for him.
Yeah.
At least Artem Anisimov, you could, you're getting $4.5 million off your books. But Seabrook, Keith, you're stuck with them. Kane, Taves,
not going anywhere.
You don't want to move those guys. DeBrincat, definitely not moving him. So yeah, those were the names. So it's not like, and most of those guys are going to be restricted free agents at the end of the year. So you're not going to get a lot. You're not going to get a whole lot for them because you're trading a guy they're going to have to re-sign anyway. So I don't expect miracles tomorrow.
Yeah, like I said, I don't expect much major going on unless there's that tiny percent that the world is absolutely shot. I'm not really expecting it. I'm really more intrigued about what other teams are trading because there's a lot of possibilities right there. One thing I kind of wanted to bring up, I was reading this afternoon, and this concerns our division rival, the Blues. They have been on just a downward spiral lately, and there are rumblings that they may be sellers tomorrow. I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that.
They're in the last wild card spot right
They're
now,
out
so
of it.
they very well are they?
Yeah, they're a point out now.
Okay. Oh wow. Yeah, I think I looked yesterday or the day before. So there's a very good chance they don't make it, and they're not playing well enough to, even if they do make it, to compete. So, why not? They're going to be smart about it. I think are they going to trade future assets to just make the playoffs if they don't feel confident that they could win it? So I don't know. I mean, I'm a guy who I would much rather not make that one last ditch move that usually doesn't pay off in the long run. Think about how many trade deadline moves the Blackhawks made that they just traded away assets for nothing.
For rentals, basically.
Yeah, and they didn't help them. I think, St. Louis would be smart to not do those things. Is save your draft picks, save players that you could trade, then just load up in the offseason and, step back and be like, you know what, better to just go with what we got than and not blow the future or our future plans for it.
It's really strange. St. Louis fans at the beginning of the year, when they were really good, they were all planning a St. Louis victory parade. But once they start doing bad, they want everyone traded, everyone fired.
That's St. Louis for you.
You know what's really weird? I'm looking at the St. Louis Blues percentages of making the playoffs. They've dropped to nearly 40%. For a good amount of the year, they were above the 90 percentile. It's quite a bit drop.
And so, Anaheim's, I don't think they're a very good team either. Dallas is one of those teams that's not going to make I don't think they have any realistic shot of winning a Stanley Cup. And hockey's one where a wild card team legitimately could win a Stanley Cup. I think Columbus probably has a better shot than, a lot of teams in there, the second wild card. But I just don't think Dallas and Anaheim are the teams. And St. Louis, if they do make it, they're nowhere near as good as Nashville. And I think Vegas would bounce them too. Well, those would be the teams that they would play.
Yeah, we've seen Nashville, just including today, this afternoon on NBC, we've just seen Nashville knock the living crap out of the Blues, in addition to the Blackhawks the past year or so.
Yeah, and so as it stands right now, is Vegas? I don't think Vegas is giving up that division. I think they're going to win it. And I think Nashville's going to take the Central, and you would have to play one of those two teams if you're going to make it. And Vegas is pretty much unbeatable at home, and they would have the home playoff advantage, and Nashville's just going to kick the crap out of you. So
yeah, they continue to prove me wrong. The Golden Knights.
I know. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop or them to start stinking, but they don't.
They don't. No, they just keep on going. It's pretty amazing.
As a hockey fan, I don't know what to think if they make the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah. I can't believe we're sitting here thinking that they could win a President's Trophy, more or less a Stanley Cup, because I thought, okay, they drafted some good veteran guys. They have a good core to build for the future, but they'll probably be around, 500, whatever. Wow.
Yeah, they have the best record in hockey.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Because the Tampa has one more point, but they played more games. So
Right.
yeah, they're playing amazing. You look at their home record, 24-5-2 on the home ice.
That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
So they're almost unbeatable on ice or home ice. So, as compared to the Blackhawks, who at home are 15-14-3.
Yeah, that's not good. They've been incredibly mediocre at home.
So right now the Blackhawks are 11 points out of the playoffs, and they would have to leapfrog Colorado, Los Angeles, St. Louis, and Anaheim to get into that spot.
Not happening.
No. I wonder what their mathematical odds are right now. It's got to be.
I have them up right now.
Oh, wait, let me guess. 6%.
Just so we're clear, this is based off sportsclubstats.com. So, no.
What is it?
Take another guess.
3%?
Sorry, I just lost it. Hold on, let me find it again. My screen just went blank. Because the last time I checked, that was a big no. Sorry about this. Okay, it's back. What'd you say, 3%?
Yeah.
No.
What is it?
0.2. It's pretty much zero.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm looking at the graph right now.
They have 19 games left, and they have to make up 11 points and leapfrog 4 teams.
Yeah. Not looking good.
Just get the golf clubs out now.
Pretty much. Because if you look at the graph, just the graph alone for playoff odds compared to all the other teams, the graph is probably one of my favorite things to look at. Basically, looking at where they were at the turn of the new year versus now, between December and January, like right before the new year, right around Christmas, their chances were around the 80 percentile. Since then, they dropped below 60, were briefly above 60 in early January, and from mid-January on, they have just absolutely plummeted to the bottom.
You mean that time when they said it was time to turn it on and start playing every game like it was a playoff game?
Yeah.
So they were playing it like a playoff game the last couple years.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I wonder what their odds are of not being last in the Central Division at the end of the year.
That is an interesting question, because what this website has right now, it also factors strength of schedule in, so that's kind of interesting, but it's also necessary to factor that in. But they actually show the stats of strength of schedule, so that's kind of cool. They have win cup percentage, playoff percentage, President's Trophy percentage. So the Blackhawks, right now, their win cup percentage is Mr. Blutarski's grade point average. Not surprising. Their playoff 0.2, like I said. And seed-wise, all the seeds are pretty much at 0%. That's possible. Like wildcard A, wildcard B, all that stuff is at 0. Looking at conference seeding, their highest percent in just terms of seed is 12 seed, 66.
Oof.
Not last, not good, right at 12.
I don't see any way that they don't finish last in this division, because second to last is St. Louis, and they're 10 points in front of.
I thought Colorado was
Blackhawks
in between.
with the same number. They're in between, but they've played 2 less games than the Blackhawks, and they're still 7 points ahead. So yeah, St. Louis is two teams ahead of them, and they've played the same number of games and 10 points ahead. Colorado has played 2 less games and are 7 points ahead. And their next one is against Colorado's next game is against Vancouver. So there's a good chance of winning that one.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Colorado, they actually have a 33.9% chance of making the playoffs, and their highest percent right now, seed-wise, it's 11, so just a step above, but they also have a 19% at the 10, 16% at the 9, and in the wild cards, 16% wild card A, 12% wild card B, and then 6% the third division seed. So there's still significantly more percent chance for them than the Blackhawks, and that should say something about the Blackhawks' chances.
Blackhawks are going to get a top 10 pick.
And at this point, I welcome that.
All right, should we wrap this up talking a little Bears?
Sure.
First thing I want to mention is, so we post the show every week on YouTube, as well as a lot of different podcast networks. But had somebody commenting on the last YouTube episode, and I was trying to explain her point, and I don't know if I wasn't understanding him or he wasn't understanding me, but from what I gathered is the listener thought the Bears were dumb, and they're a dumb team because players are coming off of contract. And I don't understand is try to say that every player in every team has players that come up for contract. They're not slaves. They're players that have a choice. Since the 70s, there's been free agency, and a player signs a contract, and when that contract is done, they can move on to wherever they want. Alshon Jeffrey clearly didn't want to be here anymore, and he moved on. This year, Drew Brees is going to be a free agent for the most part. He's out of contract with the Saints. Are they dumb because his contract ended? No, it's just the length of the contract. And they were saying the Bears were dumb because Kyle Fuller was coming off of contract. And they're not dumb. They have the option after the year he was after last year, they had to decide whether or not they were picking up his 5th year option on the contract. And that 5th year option would have been like $10 million for his 5th year. And he was coming off a year where, he was coming off a down year the year before and an injury plagued season before that. So it wouldn't made sense to pick up that option. So that didn't make sense. Now he's going to be a free agent after this year, and he played well enough to earn money. And you can use a franchise tag on him, but you can't force him to sign a new contract with you because he's a free agent. That's how that works. And I just don't understand where this guy's. I mean, Bears may have done some dumb things, but a player's contract expiring is not one of them.
I'm reading the feed now. I really don't understand what he's trying to say. You draft a guy, he's got a rookie contract, and you're not going to just stamp him for life right away. I don't understand where he's getting at here. Is he saying he should have extended Fuller earlier on? Because if that were the case, they wouldn't do that because he was injured. Why would you do that?
Yeah, I mean, he had he had a good rookie year, and then the next year he really regressed and looked bad. His third year, he missed the whole year because of injury, and last year was his fourth year. So, if you would have extended him off of a bad year or an injury year, everyone would have said they were dumb because they gave a bad player, an injured player, money, and now he had a good year and a contract year, and you're in a predicament. Do you give him a ton of money to and hope that he performs like he did in his first and fourth years and not his second and third years? Or do you franchise tag him? It's a no-win position for the Bears as far as fan perception.
Yeah, I'm really trying to understand this here. Like, okay, like I know he's talking about giving money to some players, certain players, and okay, I get that part, but I mean, is he saying that we're giving all the money to certain players but not others so they don't have any more? Because that's not really the case either, because both the Bulls and the Bears have plenty of cap room.
Yeah, the Bears, now that they've cut Sitton, if they make the expected cuts I expect them to make, they could have upwards of $100 million to spend this offseason. They've got the money. They could sign whoever they want. It's just you don't want to just sign players to sign players, and you don't want to lock yourself into bad contracts just because you have the money. Coming off of several bad years in a row, you're probably going to have to overpay some players to come here, but you can't wildly overpay for them like the rumors of the Jets paying Kirk Cousins $60 million the first year. Like those are ridiculous.
Right. So I don't know if maybe he can clarify on the next show after what we said. I don't know. I guess I'm just not fully clear on what's being said right here. So I don't know.
But a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. One was it came out that Alshon Jeffrey just had surgery for a torn rotator cuff, that he played the entire season with a torn rotator cuff. The fact that he played the entire season with a torn rotator cuff is absolute irrefutable proof that he just didn't want to play for the Bears anymore, because he would have missed with a sore calf how many games that he just didn't want to play. He didn't want to play. He didn't want to be a Bear. And he would play through things with the team he wanted to be with. He just didn't want to be with the Bears.
Yeah, that's what it basically told me. And I could sit here and be angry about it all day, but at the same time, if you were that kind of player on that kind of team in that kind of situation with the kind of coaching you had, I would understand why you wouldn't like the situation. I don't think, though, it's really an excuse to sit out and quit, because, I don't know, I think that's a little shallow, but, I'm not going to play Mr. Holier Than Thou and say that I wouldn't at least feel some anger about playing on a team like that.
No, I mean, I would have way more respect if he played as hard as he could and played through, some minor pain or some minor injuries like he did this year. But then went to the Bears GM, Ryan Pace, and like a man, and said, listen, I don't want to play for the Bears anymore. Please don't franchise tag me. The Bears could just say, like, screw you, we're going to do it anyway because it's what's best for the team. But I would have had way more respect if that's the way he went about it and said, I just don't want to be here. Please don't franchise tag me. Let me go elsewhere.
At least be honest about it and up front.
Yeah, don't be like, oh, I'm injured. And then it makes the Bears look bad because you're like, well, how come they can't keep wide receivers healthy? Then nobody walks away from an NFL season like they did, coming off of a Florida vacation. They come aches and pains, and they're dinged up and banged up. But if those common aches and pains and bang ups are, you don't want to play through them, then that looks bad on the team. It looks like they're actual injuries, not just bang ups. Alshon Jeffrey's, what we thought were injuries reflected bad on the Bears' strength and training staff, and ultimately they lost their jobs partly because of Alshon, but a lot of other players too. And if players are just not wanting to play through it because they don't want to play for this team, it makes the team look bad, it makes the GM look bad, it makes the coaches look bad, it makes everybody look bad.
Right. That's why I don't like the way he carried it out. I understand why he wouldn't want to play with the Bears, like I said, but the way he carried it out, I agree. That's not a way I think that a lot of people appreciate that kind of thing. I mean, look at Kyle Long. He's played on so many bad Bears teams, and he's gotten beaten to an absolute pulp. But if he would go out there on one leg, he'd do it.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. So I just wanted to bring that up is I think him playing through a torn rotator cuff, which is really painful. I've had a torn rotator cuff. It's extraordinarily painful. Is lifting your arm up. It feels like somebody's stabbing you. And him playing wide receiver on a Super Bowl champion team. Yeah, that and there was some calf soreness that caused him to miss multiple games with the Bears.
Yeah.
It just tells you he didn't want to be here. The other bit of news is Josh Sitton was officially told that he was not going to be a Bear this year, and they parted ways with Jarrell Freeman. The Jarrell Freeman one I get because although the when he was healthy and not suspended for PEDs, he was a very, very good player, but he missed how much of last season with injuries. And when if he comes back healthy this offseason, he's going to be facing however many game suspension for the beginning of the season. So you're going to be paying a guy to be on suspension. Makes sense for him to go. And I saw some comments on, I don't know if it was like where I read a Bleacher Report or if it was the NFL version of MLB trade rumors. I think it might have been there. And people were like blasting the Bears for this dumb signing. And I don't think the Jarrell Freeman was a dumb signing. I thought that was a very good, smart signing. He played really well. You can't expect that your guy's going to get 2 drug suspensions. Like that is, he's not Kreskin. He's not Nostradamus. He's not going to, how do you predict that? That's on the player. But when he played, he was really good. He was the best Bears defensive player, arguably. So it was a smart signing, with some bad luck along with it.
Yeah, definitely.
I will argue that all day long. In the end, I guess you could say that a signing is only as good as the performance you get out of it. But, nobody has a crystal ball. As you go into it, you make the signing projecting what the player you think they're going to give you. And based on the performance he gave you while he was on the field was well worth the contract. Do you expect a torn tricep? Do you expect two different drug suspensions? No, you don't expect that. Those aren't things you expect. And when they happen, you can't be held responsible for those. So I'm always going to say that those were good signings. Some of the other signings, Marcus Cooper, Marcus Wheaton, those were terrible signings. And I'm totally willing to throw blame on Ryan Pace when blame is deserved. I just don't think the Jarrell Freeman one was one where you can blast him.
I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head right there, because when he got him, I'm like, wow, we're adding to our linebacker core. We haven't had a linebacker core since Urlacher left. And I knew a lot of Colts fans at school, and they were upset. They're like, damn, you took away Jarrell Freeman from us. I can't be mad at that.
And then the one last thing I wanted to bring up was, as I previously mentioned, Josh Sitton was informed well in advance of the league New Year's start, was that he wasn't going to be part of the Bears' plans. And it allowed him, it was a classy move. I don't agree with the move, but it was a classy move to say, hey, listen, they apparently sat down with him and said he wasn't going to be part of the plans. They asked him where he thought he was, and he said he felt he had a few more years left in him of good quality football. And the Bears gave him the opportunity to move on and in advance of the league year. So he's not going to, you could keep him, you could cut him, way late and kind of screw a guy where he doesn't have, teams that need a guard are going to go out and sign free agents and draft rookies. And then he gets cut later and is competing with teams that don't have need anymore. Kind of like the Packers did to him. The Packers kind of screwed him the way they did it. But the Bears gave him ample opportunity. Teams that are guard starving, he's going to have the pick of the litter for the most part because he's the first available. So I appreciate that they did that. I just don't understand the cut. I think you disagree, but which is totally cool. I know a lot of people agreed with the cut. I just don't, based on the fact that I know it's a lot of money, and if you were cap hungry, yeah, it makes sense. Bears aren't cap hungry, and right now the three guys that you have to fill that void are Kyle Long, who is coming off 2 off-season surgeries, and he wasn't very good last year because of injury and other things. So you've got him. If he comes back healthy, all right, you got one position locked down. The other two are, I guess you could put Hronis Grasu at center and Cody Whitehair there. That's a possibility. But Hronis Grasu, I don't think grew enough to be a quality center. I think you're weakening your center position to strengthen your guard one. But you got Eric Kush, who I really liked his play, but then he was injured most of last year. You got to hope he comes back. And then Jordan Morgan, who I really did like when the Bears drafted him. I didn't watch any game film on him until after they drafted him. And I was like, I think he could be something. I think he could be a road grader type of guy. So maybe they felt good enough what they saw him in the practice squad.
Right. Like, my whole thing with this is what it tells me, and what I thought it was going to tell us if he were cut, now that we know that he is that there is some sort of plan in place here. I just don't think they're going to get rid of a Pro Bowl offensive lineman, even though he's old and pretty much broken down, and then just kind of go in willy-nilly. To me, there is some sort of plan in place for replacement, whether that's signing, draft, upgrading, maybe all the above. So that's why I'm not saying, yay, Josh Sitton's gone, or, god damn, Josh Sitton's gone. I'm just kind of like, okay, I can understand that. If they have a plan, I can understand it. So my feeling overall is indifferent. I'm not surprised that it happened, but it's kind of an indifferent feeling.
I just really, after they got rid of Brandon Marshall, and which I agreed with the move, they didn't replace his productivity. After they got rid of Martellus Bennett, which I agreed with, they didn't replace his productivity. They let go of Alshon Jeffrey, which I would have rather they paid him the franchise tag. But he clearly didn't want to be here, which we've gone through and we've seen. But you didn't replace his productivity. That's my concern, is if you let Josh Sitton go and you don't replace his productivity, then you are really setting your franchise quarterback up for failure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to look at it too.
So I'm hoping that they have information that we don't, and they know Kyle's going to be fine, and they feel Eric Kush is going to be either going to be the starter and Jordan Morgan's going to be a solid backup, or they really like the progression they saw with Jordan Morgan and they think he's going to be a road grader, and Eric Kush will be the backup. If that's the case and they've figured this out, then I'm fine to say I was wrong. Good job, Ryan Pace. It's nice to have that $8 million, but he better have figured this out, because if nothing else is paying $8 million to Josh Sitton to protect your quarterback, worth it. So they better have figured this out.
Yeah, I certainly hope so.
And the last thing I wanted to do is, every week I try to go through a position of the NFL draft and talk about some of the players that are at that position in the draft. And we didn't do it last week just because we had a busy show and I had a busy week, so I didn't get to do it. So I'm sort of playing catch up. But this week I did running backs, and I didn't do that many. So usually I'll do a lot more players, but I started watching the running back class and I wasn't that impressed. So I sort of stopped. So the first guy I want to talk about quickly is Saquon Barkley, 5'11", 223 out of Penn State. And this guy is the absolute cream of the crop of this running back class. The guy starts and stops on a dime, can change direction. He can just dead stop from, 100 miles an hour one direction, dead stop, and change directions and not miss a beat. Very patient runner. He gets up to top speed really quickly, compact, no wasted motion in his movement. He's got home run speed. It makes it look easy. Like if you just isolated him, you're like, he's loping. But then you put him with the other players and he's running away from them. He will cut back into voided gaps for big yardage. The only cons I have on him are he went through a bout of the drops in the passing game. He's not a very good run blocker. And in the NFL, he's going to have to learn to run more north and south instead of trying to run east and west. But he's going to be great. Absolute period. He has the talent of a Barry Sanders, and that's not to say he's Barry Sanders or he's going to be the productivity of Barry Sanders. He has that same skill set. You watch him play, that's the same skill set he has. He's going to make your offensive line look better. I don't like him nearly as much as I liked Leonard Fournette coming out last year, but Saquon Barkley is easily a top 5 talent in this draft, and he's a very safe pick. Next guy I looked at was Sony Michel from Georgia, 5'11", 212. He's a big, powerful runner, north-south type guy. You won't see him dance in the pocket. Very decisive runner. He will cut back a little bit, but once he makes up his mind, he goes where he's going. He's got some decent hands, and half of his touchdowns this past season were over 16 yards, so he had some big, long runs. But this guy's too willing to lower his head and just run through the tackler. Has no finesse at all. And in the pocket, he has his steps are a little too, he doesn't step high enough, and he has way too many trips over offensive lineman legs, which is you don't like to see. But the drop off between Saquon Barkley and everyone else is huge. Michel, he's a hardworking kid, and I don't see him being a failure in the league, but I also don't see him being a stud superstar back. He's a sort of middle of the pack guy, unless you put a really solid offensive line in front of him. I only did 2 more guys. One is Darius Geis, LSU, 5'11", 222. He's another powerful runner, great footwork and balance. Defensive backs are going to have a hard time tackling this guy. He's an agile enough to make the backfield tacklers miss. So if a guy penetrates in the backfield, he can make him miss, even though he's a power runner. And he replaced Leonard Fournette at LSU without really missing a beat. but he takes way too many hard hits for no reason. And he relies too much on yards after contact in his productivity. So you don't see him get a lot of yards before contact is he hits somebody and runs through them. And you're going to see that go down in the NFL because they're bigger, stronger, and better tacklers. And he's not going to really win any foot races. I basically see a lot of Marshawn Lynch in him. I think he has a productive NFL career. I just don't think it's going to be a long NFL career. Again, big drop off from Saquon Barkley. And the last guy I looked at was Ronald Jones II from USC, 6 foot 195. This guy has absolutely amazing footwork. You watch he must be a hell of a dancer. He can start and stop and slide step away from tacklers. Very patient and calm runner. He never looks panicked when he's running. He's very electric when he has open space, but he just doesn't have the size and build to be a workhorse back. And he's not a good pass blocker. He was brought down way too easily by tacklers. Too many no gain or negative gain runs for me. And he's definitely not a prototypical between the tackles guy. The guy's got special footwork. He's going to need to be a part of a running back tandem to be effective. But he does have this like it factor. I can't describe it, but he's going to do great things. But when you think about it logically, I don't see how he's going to be an every down back. He's not a good enough pass blocker to be a third down back. I don't know if he's stout enough to be a between the tacklers, typical first, second down back. I think if you use him like the Bears use Tariq Cohen or the Chiefs use Tariq Hill, I think he's very successful, even though he's a little bit different skill set than those guys. But I think similar type usage, and he's going to be very effective. You just can't overuse the guy. So if there's players that you want me to look at, I'm more than happy to. I just have to sort of, it's a lot of time to watch game film. So, I have to draw the line somewhere. But if there's guys that I didn't do and you want me to look at them, so I've done running backs, quarterbacks, and tight ends already. Next will be linebackers, like the inside linebackers. So if there's somebody you want me to look at, definitely let us know. Is there anything else you wanted to add to the show, Alex?
No, I thought this was a really good one. I think I've said everything I've wanted to.
All right. Well, I just want to say thanks everybody so much for listening. Please make sure you subscribe however you listen to your podcasts, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or the TuneIn app. Share with your friends. Like us and follow us on social media, Twitter at ShyFanPat1, at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan.
She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down